All right, so while some of us were taking in the hot dog eating contest, USA versus Mexico last night, I'm going to guess Phil Steele was watching tape. Were you watching tape this 4th of July, Phil? Is that an accurate guess?
Yes, that was. You're on to me. You caught it. That's pretty much all I do is watch football. I don't follow any other sport out there.
Well, the 2025 college football preview, Phil Steele, is out right now. Phil, I know you like to post people, whether they're on vacation, beach, wherever. Where's the craziest place that you've had a picture sent to you of someone reading your magazine?
I would have to say a couple of years ago there was one from the top of the Eiffel Tower, which I really appreciated. That was a pretty neat place.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
How much more difficult has your job gotten in the last 24, 36 months with portal, with all these things, and just keeping everybody on the right roster? How difficult has that become for you?
Ridiculous compared to 5 years ago, especially with the 2 transfer portals. And the one thing I noticed this year, guys, which I didn't really notice last year as much, but this year for sure, a lot of players that came in the winter portal were leaving at the end of the spring portal, for crying out loud. But we have to go. We go to the press at the start of June, so that we're able to capture not only all the players that have left, but all the players that have signed. But it was a very hectic month of May. In fact, last year I started my coaches' interviews even before the portal closed, just to get them all in. This year I tried to cram in the 125, 126 coaches' interviews all in the month of May, because I wanted the portal completely closed, and then finding out where all the players landed, and it made it for a very hectic month of May.
If you had to put your best guess, or you may know the exact number, in the Power 4 conferences, in the 2 deeps, what percentage of those would be transfer players now that didn't start there? Would it be over half now at this point?
It sure seems like it. I don't have an exact number, but I could tell you it varies from team to team. You take a look at Clemson, for example. Clemson has 3 or 4 transfers coming in. Iowa State has 5 or 6 transfers coming in. Those are teams that have a lot of continuity, a lot of cohesion, not bringing in a lot of players. There are other teams, like when I talked to Rich Rod at West Virginia this year, he was bringing in, we went over the positions. He's like, Phil, that guy hasn't even been on the team yet. He's coming in. We just signed him in the transfer portal, so I can't give you too many specifics on him. A team like West Virginia, the entire roster is almost entirely new. So I would think when you average it out, it would come near those numbers.
Phil, because I'm just looking at Arkansas's offense. Just the offensive alone, the 2 deep's got 15 transfer players here at Arkansas, Phil.
Yes, and what I do is on my team pages, I've got players highlighted in yellow when they transfer in. Arkansas is basically yellow all over the place. So, there are a lot of transfers coming in. And to me, one of the things I did when I was doing the magazine this year is I did give a little bump to teams that have the cohesion, got the continuity, a lot, not massively going to the transfer portal. And I think that's going to be an advantage as you see going on. Look at last year, for example. A team like Iowa State was in the Big 12 title game. They didn't use the portal a lot. Clemson won the ACC. Army and Navy were huge surprises in the American Conference. Guess what? They don't even use the transfer portal. So I think there is something to be said for teams' continuity and cohesion.
We're talking with Phil Steele here on the Lewis Automotive Group hotline. Tailon Green is a transfer, Phil, but he's under year 2 under Bobby Petrino and Sam Pittman in this offense. Where do you slot him in the pecking order of quarterbacks in this league?
I would definitely put him in the upper half of the SEC. And I love what we saw to Taylen Green last year, the improvement from the first part of the year to the second part of the year. Remember the first part of the year, you go through the first 5 games, he's hitting 49%. He's got 4 touchdown passes, just 4 interceptions. Not great numbers. But in the second half of the year, 65% completions, 11 TDs, only 5 interceptions. And he actually threw for the second most yards in school history behind Ryan Mallett. So I really liked the improvement we saw to Tailon Green. I loved what I saw to him at Boise at times. And I think we're going to see the best version of Tailon Green this year. You got to love a guy that's 6'6", 230, can hurt you with the legs, is accurate, and it can hurt you with his arm.
I know there's a lot of question marks about this wide receiver group, Phil, and you were just talking with Tommy about the number of transfers on the 2 deep. They've added several skill position guys out of the portal. Is there a guy that you think could have a lot of impact in this offense with so many pass catchers gone from last year's team?
Yeah, somebody is going to emerge. And, last year, I think if you watched Arkansas football, you knew that Andrew Armstrong was going to get the ball the majority of the time. I don't know if we're going to see that this year. I think it's going to be a lot more balanced. I think they're improved in the slot with both Raylan Sharp and Cameron Shanks in there. Shanks is a guy that's got a lot of speed coming in from UAB. Keep your eyes on Omega Blake, though. Also, he's a transfer from Charlotte, was at South Carolina originally, had 795 yards last year. He can catch the football. So I think you're going to see a lot more balance out of the Arkansas wide receivers this year than you had last year when Andrew Armstrong hauled in the majority of the catches.
College football's foremost authority, Phil Steele, with us here on the Morning Rush. Let's talk about that offensive line. You've got a couple transfers there, but some returning players with Marion Harris and Fernando Carmona on that front line. That's kind of the returning main players. How does this Arkansas offensive line unit rank amongst the SEC, and do you see a clear step forward this year with the five guys up front?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is where the biggest improvement for Arkansas is going to be is on the offensive line. You remember last year they lost a second-team All-SEC center, their left guard, left tackle. This year they've got three starters back. They had in UCF's Caden Kittler. They had in Georgia Tech's Corey Robinson, Oregon's Shaq McRoy. So I think you're looking at an offensive line that's a lot better. They lost some starters from last year, but they've got good depth at running back and wide receiver. I think the offensive line is going to really help that unit out a lot. Sam Pittman knows offensive lines going back to his days at Georgia and feels pretty good about this unit. Says that in years past, the last couple of years, they've been trying to cover a weakness. He says there's no weaknesses to cover in this year's offensive line.
What about the flip side of the ball? Cameron Ball's the name that I think a lot of fans talk about. Sorey's another one at linebacker. What do you see out of Arkansas's defensive front this year, and how does it stack up amongst the SEC?
Yeah, I think the key is going to be up front on the defensive line. Only one starter comes back from last year, but they do have 7 what I call VHTs, or very highly touted players on the defensive line. So they've got the athletes up front. Now, Coach Pittman told me they felt pretty darn good about the defensive line after the spring. The big question mark he had was, will they be able to get to the quarterback? And that's going to be the key to me. They've got the size up front on the defensive line. Can they get to the quarterback? If they do, I think they're going to be very solid against the run with the size they have. As you mentioned, Sorey, a linebacker. They also have Dix at linebacker. Good talent at the linebacker position. I think the secondary should be improved over last year. The key to me is going to be, can they put pressure on the opposing quarterback this year?
Phil Steele with us here on the Morning Rush. Phil, I know scheduling is always tough in the Southeastern Conference. Arkansas is one of the toughest schedules in college football. They're accustomed to that. But when you look at the non-conference games, including Memphis, Notre Dame, is there a game you've honed in on as being the most important for Arkansas football this fall?
As far as the non-conference slate or the actual conference slate?
A combination, because there are important non-conference games, but collectively, is there a game that you think between both is the most important this year?
Yeah, I'm gonna go to October 25th. That game against Auburn. I think they got to take care of business at home, hold serve there, get the win. Auburn is a much improved team this year, but I think Arkansas has got the capability. They won at Auburn last year. That's one of those games that they've got to come up and get the win on.
Phil, with Auburn, I know that there's been some criticism of Hugh Freeze and their lackluster recruiting class in 26. They bring in Jackson Arnold in the offseason from Oklahoma. Does he have, in your opinion, the hottest seat in the Southeastern Conference this fall?
Right up there, I would have to say. Auburn, although Auburn, if you watch them last year, if you watch them on the field, they were a lot better than their final record would indicate. I mean, during the course of the season in conference play, they were plus 62 yards per game. Their problem was turnovers last year, so it was a tough 5-7 season. Now they've got 9 starters back on offense, 6 on defense. I think you're looking at a veteran team. Jackson Arnold got beat up for what the production was on the field last year at Oklahoma. But remember, he was missing his top 6 wide receivers at times. They had an offensive line with 0 returning starters. he's got a much better supporting cast here. He goes from having a depleted wide receiving core to having one of the best receiving cores in the country, a solid offensive line in front of him. So I think you're going to see a much improved version of Jackson Arnold, and I do think you're going to see Auburn be an improved team this year. And like I said, they were better than their 5-7 record last year. They could easily have won a lot of those games they lost.
Phil, next week, SEC Media Days, College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta, Georgia. I know we've talked about a few tidbits thus far, but what are you interested in coming out of next week, if any importance from SEC Media Days?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think Texas will probably come out voted number one in the SEC. They've got a lot of talent. They've got Arch Manning back at quarterback. It'll be interesting to see where the media lines up Georgia and Alabama. As far as coaches' comments go, to me, a lot of those comments that you hear at media days are not really the type of comments that are going to drive me. As far as I get a lot more talking to the coaches personally off the record than you do getting coaches on the record. But I think it's going to be interesting to see where the media picks everybody.
Where do you pick everybody in the SEC? We were talking about this last week. Who's the top shelf this year in the league? It seems like there's more parity in the top 3, 4, 5 teams than maybe we've had going in, or at least that's the perception coming out of last year.
Yeah, I think we've got numerous teams that are going to be contenders for the title. I mean, Georgia last year took on a ridiculous schedule. They had to play Alabama, Ole Miss, and Texas all on the road. This year they get all three of those teams at home. In fact, you look at Georgia's schedule, they're not going to be an underdog in a single game this year. Their three toughest opponents are all at home. I've got them picked to win the SEC as far as during the regular season, have the best record. Texas does have to play Oklahoma away from home. They play Georgia, as mentioned, on the road. They play Ohio State on the road, so a tough schedule, but they may be the most talented team in the SEC. And then keep your eyes on Alabama this year. Kalen DeBoer, year 2 at Washington, took a less talented team than what he has here this year at Alabama and took Washington to the national title game. I think if they get good quarterback play, and I like what I saw to Ty Simpson at the Manning Passing Academy. They've got Ryan Williams at receiver. They've got an outstanding offensive line and defense. I think Alabama's going to cause some problems for folks. And then, you look at the next tier. LSU is a team that's got a really good schedule, and they brought in a lot of transfers and have a veteran team. Oklahoma last year had no offense whatsoever. As mentioned, their wide receiving core was depleted. They had 0 starters on the offensive line. Much improved offensive line, much improved receiving core. I think John Mateer with the Washington State offense comes in. It blends with a top 5 defense that Oklahoma has and a good solid special teams. Plus, last year Oklahoma only had 3 home games. This year they only have 3 true road games. I think those 5 teams are probably your top teams in the SEC this year.
Thoughts on Oklahoma? We got some Sooner fans amongst us here in Western Arkansas. Seems like this is a year that Brent Venables has really got to make a clear step forward for OU's program.
And I think he will. They are my number 1 surprise team this year, which means a team no one's going to rank in the top 10. That has a great shot at making the playoff. They have my number 1 rated defensive line, number 4 set of linebackers. As mentioned, special teams are solid. The offense is much improved. The schedule, while still difficult. I mean, remember, when they came into the league and Texas came into the league, Texas drew very few of the big boys. Oklahoma drew them all. And Oklahoma still plays everybody this year. I mean, they play Michigan. They play Texas, South Carolina, Ole Miss, at Tennessee, at Alabama, home to LSU. That's a brutal schedule, but more manageable. They're tough to beat at home, and I think they're going to hold on to the home this year. And going over the roster with Coach Venables like I did, I thought this was a playoff caliber roster. So watch Oklahoma to be a vastly improved team this year.
All right, so when you get your Phil Steele's college football magazine and you start looking through it, Phil, it's almost like there's a language you better learn. There's terms and abbreviations, and it really, once you kind of get the lingo of the book, it becomes almost addictive.
Yeah, and I think the key is, back in 1995 when I started this, the abbreviations were probably pretty doggone confusing. But now everybody texts, and there are all these abbreviations in text. So I think people are easier to figure out them. But, yes, if you're a veteran Phil Steele reader, you pretty much get the lingo and understand it and zip right through it. First-year readers, it might take you a little bit of time, but once you get the amount of information, I feel, and I'm going to ask you guys, you've gotten other preview magazines. I feel it's got 3 to 4 times the amount of information of any other preview out there.
Here's my only issue, Phil. I'm turning 50 later this year. I've got to get stronger glasses to read you put so much information in a couple of pages on a team. You better have some strong readers to get it all in.
Yes, and I can tell you that I have to use readers at times to get through the magazine.
I'm not alone.
If you're looking for pictures of cheerleaders and a lot of white space and easy to read, this is not your magazine. But if you're looking for information on top of information, crammed into as much space as we could, that's what this one's about.
All right, Phil. Phil Steele, 2025 college football preview. Where can our listeners get it and read about it before the upcoming season?
You know, a couple of years ago, we went exclusive to 2 places, and it's been pretty good for us, Barnes & Noble and Books A Million. So if you have a Barnes & Noble in the area, head over there. Books A Million, head over there. They've got plenty of them on copy. They started July 4th. They got them in stock, and you're able to get them. When you go, though, maybe lift a few weights prior. It's a heavy magazine. You compare it to every other magazine. It's 360-some-odd pages. Loaded with information. Or you can go to philsteele.com. That's STEELE.com. And when you go to philsteele.com and order the magazine, there's going to be a shipping charge, but we give you the digital version for free. And with the digital version, we actually update that all the way through September. So if a player gets knocked off the team or something, it's all updated on the digital version. So Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, or philsteele.com.
BetOnline continues to be your number one source for all your sports betting action. And with baseball in full swing and football season right around the corner, BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting. From MLB, UFC to tennis and NFL futures, BetOnline remains your choice for sports wagering information. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. Head to the website today and take advantage of their industry-leading VIP program with level-up bonuses and weekly cash boosts. Bet online. The game starts here.